3, 2.
Hello, everybody. Good morning and welcome to the weekly media briefing with Montgomery County Executive Marc Elrich. I'm Lorna Virgili, Hispanic Public Information Officer, and joining us today is Dr. Nina Ashford, the county's Chief of Public Health Services, Dr. James Bridgers, Director of the Department of Health and Human Services, as well as Mr. Sean O'Donnell, the Acting Deputy Chief of Public Health Services. Our special guest this week is Sarah Koval-Smucker, who is the Climate Change Officer. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Mr. County Executive, good morning.
Good morning, and thank you, everybody, for joining us again today. We're starting a bit earlier than normal this week because I'm going to be soon heading up to the what was the Key Bridge in Baltimore, and I'll be joining Secretary of Transportation Pete Buttigieg and Governor Wes Moore and other state leaders to mark the reopening of the shipping channel. I think everybody knows about the tragic loss of the 6 men on that bridge at the end of March. And as the recovery efforts began, the investigation into the bridge collapse has also started, and more than 2,000 people worked to open the Port of Baltimore again. The operations at the Port of Baltimore are critical to the Maryland economy. When I was in Korea and China recently, I was reminded of the importance of this port and also our rail lines, how important these things are to our economic development efforts. It actually matters to people who are looking to do industrial production in a location. Access to shipping is really pretty important, and Maryland has a pretty unique confluence of a major port and major rail lines running through the state and running through Baltimore that are a real advantage locationally for being in Maryland in general, but also being in Baltimore and down to Montgomery County. It's a good corridor with quick access to transportation. So all this kind of reminded me of just how important this is to our economic development efforts. I want to commend the work of the Army Corps of Engineers that's been put in over the last several weeks to make sure the channel is safe again. And Governor Moore's work at leading this effort was really important, and we moved quickly. And we also had support from our congressional teams, state lawmakers, and others who played a role in getting this done. So it's a big day for Maryland. I think a lot of people will be relieved initially. I don't know if people thought it was going to be able to clear the channel this quickly. So I'm very happy that it got done as quickly as it did. And talk a little bit about a bio conference we attended in San Diego last week. I joined more than 20,000 biotech leaders from around the world at Bio International Convention in San Diego to promote Montgomery County as a great place to live, work, and thrive, and to do scientific work in particular. And this conference is held alternatingly between San Diego and Boston. So last year's was in Boston, and this year's is in San Diego. They'll go back to Boston again next year. Most days we spend our time in partnering meetings. We is myself, Judy Costello, Lynn Benzion, and the head of our Economic Development Corporation. So we were all in these meetings and meeting with small companies and large companies about opportunities to expand their businesses in Montgomery County. We are an ideal place for companies to grow their life sciences industries because of our proximity to so many federal agencies and a talented workforce. Probably one of the biggest attractions is the FDA, because anybody trying to get a drug or a drug device into the market has to go through the FDA. So Montgomery County's proximity to FDA is a real advantage, as well as institutions like NIH and NIST and the National Cancer Institute and the Institute for Health Computing that we're opening up in the Pike and Rose district, and that's pretty exciting for us. Before the conference began, I joined the Association of University Research Parks for their annual BioCaucus meeting to discuss the new University of Maryland Institute for Health. And there was a lot of interest in that there. A lot of companies are looking for talent. They're also looking for educational institutions that can partner with them in terms of information research, being able to, in our case, bring AI to the world of medical research. So we were got a pretty good reception from people about what we're putting together here. Also, while we were in California, we visited the leaders of Antelope Valley Transit, and this was the first transit agency in North America to go fully electric with its buses. And I also toured the factory where the buses are made with the CAO of the company, and the company's called RIDE. The trip left me very excited about the possibilities that lie ahead for our county, and we have a welcoming community in more ways than one, and that works to our advantage as a recruitment tool. We're very interested, obviously, in buses and electric bus manufacturing, and so we had a very good talk with the company about what they were doing in California. Last week, I know Rich talked about the tornadoes. Again, we were hit by pretty severe weather that produced tornadoes in Poolesville, Gaithersburg, and beyond. I heard about this while I was in San Diego, and many people noted how unusual it is to have such prolonged storm responsible for such a long track of destruction here in our area. I think we're all thankful that it wasn't quite the kind of tornado that we've seen rip through parts of the Midwest, but it was big enough and caused enough damage. And it's kind of a reminder of some of the risks that we're dealing with. The storm detailed in the Post we're showing from the National Weather Service prompted the first particularly dangerous situation tornado ever issued by the Baltimore, Washington office. We've seen the impacts of extreme weather before, from the Canadian wildfire smoke turning the skies above us orange to new global heat records. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Association said last summer was the hottest August on record in 174 years of tracking surface heat on the planet. In June and July also set heat records. Thinking about my trip to San Diego was like cool and cloudy and not at all what I expected. But when we drove up to Lancaster to where the buses were, the temperature there was 104 degrees and it was only 180 miles north. All this matters because as global warming impacts our weather, we're going to be seeing increasing changes in weather. We know for sure that it's affecting hurricanes. The data on tornadoes is mixed. It depends, and some of the changes add to the intensity potential, but there are also some changes like wind shear, which have not been shown to have increased. So the research on this is still ongoing, but in terms of hurricanes, for example, scientists are talking about much more active and larger hurricane system this year because the Atlantic Ocean has reached temperatures that it doesn't normally reach at this time of year, which means it'll only be getting higher. Last August saw 19 named storms impact people around the world. Big storms can be deadly and come at a great cost to communities. And across the US last year, there were more than 20 weather and climate disasters that could cost more than $1 billion in damages. Hurricanes, wildfires, and flash floods are becoming a real threat to more and more people. We're dealing with that here in Montgomery County. We're seeing storm events that are larger and more intense, and the intensity of the storm leads to, obviously, to the flooding and overwhelming of our drainage pipe systems. If the same amount of rain fell over a longer period of time, we wouldn't have the same issue. But when the rain comes down all at once, it overwhelms the pipes in the county, and this is some of the work that we're going to have to be doing because we're getting more and more complaints from neighborhoods about either flooding on the streets or flooding from creeks behind houses that used to be pretty docile. They're not so docile anymore in a big storm. Like I said, tornadoes are a wild card and to a degree unpredictable. Scientists said there have been fewer tornadoes in Tornado Alley recently, but more places that haven't traditionally dealt with tornadoes are now experiencing them. Montgomery County has a climate change officer, Sarah Kogel-Smucker, and she's helping us design and implement an effective environmental policy. And it's our attempt to be a leader in climate change action and be a model for other jurisdictions. And I wanted to welcome Sarah to talk a little bit more about the impact of climate change on our safety. So Sarah, it's all yours.
Thank you, Mr. County Executive, and hi, I'm Sarah Kogel-Smucker, Montgomery County's Climate Change Officer. So first, my thoughts are with those affected by last week's tornado, and a brief update on the tornado. The track has been updated to a total path length of 26 miles from Polesville to Olney. The estimated peak wind was 105 miles per hour. The average lead time for the tornado warning was 20 minutes, which I understand is considered a good warning, considered the dynamic nature of Wednesday's storms. The tornado was historic, but not unprecedented. Throughout history, the county has experienced extreme weather events, including tornadoes from time to time. So since 1950, there's been 26 officially recorded tornadoes in Montgomery County, which is a rate of approximately one tornado every 3 years. And the United States experiences a peak tornado activity during late spring and early summer, with roughly 70% of tornadoes occurring between March and July. So as the county executive mentioned, in the past, though, even unpredictable and extreme weather events generally occurred within the bounds of living memory. So for those that lived in the county a long time, they could generally expect to know how to cope with these events from drawing from past experience. And now, due to global climate change, future weather patterns will no longer look like past ones. We know we are facing more extreme weather events, more extreme heat, more intense participation, as described by the county executive. And as described by the county executive, there's some evidence that United States Tornado Alley is moving eastward. We've seen multiple tornadoes more frequently in recent years here in the county. So the first year when multiple tornadoes were reported in Montgomery County was 1996. And since then, the county has had another 3 years with multiple tornadoes. That may be due to increased recording. But as the county executive described, the science is still developing and may be part of the changing weather patterns that we're seeing. But what this means overall is that we are entering a new era of emergency preparedness. In this new changing climate, we need to enhance emergency systems, improve our infrastructure, and importantly, heed weather warnings that we always should have listened to, but may have previously ignored. So the good news is the county's 2021 Climate Action Plan deals not only with stopping climate pollution, but also adapting to a changing climate. And the plan includes 20 separate climate adaptation actions. The plan envisions that by 2035, Montgomery County is equipped with the resources and infrastructure to withstand the impacts of climate change. It describes these 20 actions. We will prioritize people and communities that are most vulnerable and the most sensitive to the impacts of climate change, provide suitable infrastructure and tools to reduce the risks and impacts of more extreme climate hazards, and protect public health from climate-driven impacts. But the further good news is we don't just have a plan, we're well underway in implementing the Climate Action Plan, climate adaptation actions. So I'm not going to describe all of it, but I do want to highlight some actions that we have already taken. First, the County Council funded and our Office of Emergency Management and Homeland Security hired 3 excellent staff that are key parts of our climate team. Mara Parker, a Climate Adaptation Program Manager, Ehsan Bador, Emergency Management Specialist, and Paramajit Chipper, a hydrologist. He's an engineer. Through their work and the work of many other staff and partners in the county, we've started 16 of the 20 adaptation actions in the climate plan, and we've made significant progress on half of them. Just recently, FEMA approved the county's draft 2024 hazard mitigation plan that's been transmitted to council for final approval. This plan is designed to function as a roadmap for the coordination and execution of hazard mitigation policies and initiatives for jurisdictions within Montgomery County. It describes characteristics of hazards which threaten the community, as well as mitigation goals, strategies, and associated actions to reduce risk and minimize damages by taking proactive steps before disaster strikes. It's online. I'd urge you to take a look. It's a great write-up of tornado threats if you're interested in more information about the assessment of the threat of tornadoes hitting the county. A Some other key actions, we are advancing a resiliency hub project where there will be areas where the power stays on if the grid goes out, and community members can go to charge their phones, keep their medicines cold, and get more information as needed, be connected to services. We are in the midst of developing a comprehensive flood management plan for the county. We've installed, as been described before, 35 flood sensors for much more localized, accurate information. We completed mapping urban heat island effect to understand the areas of the county most vulnerable to extreme heat. And many of these efforts are ongoing and have opportunities for participation from the public. So we ask you to, the public to participate in and support these efforts. And then our immediate essential ask is to sign up for Alert Montgomery. This is the county's alert system where you can sign up and get emergency alerts, including weather emergency alerts on phone, email, via text, via voicemail. So sign up and then heed the alerts. And I'll say that even though this is my job, it's been a process in my own home. You know, we weren't as prepared for tornadoes. So last year during a tornado warning, my husband and I had the discussion, do we wake the kids up? Do we go to the basement? Is that actually something we need to do here? And now we've decided, yes, of course it is. If a tornado warning comes, no matter what time, we're all going to the basement. Make sure if we think there might be one, we have our phones in the room. And then after this last tornado, I double checked that my husband was signed up for Alert Montgomery and he wasn't aware of it. So now he's signed up. So this is just a great, an important reminder that now's the time to make sure you have your emergency plan, you're signed up for the alerts, and you're going to heed the warnings. So thank you.
Thank you
for joining us this morning. I appreciate that. And I think we'll take any questions from the media while Sarah's still on.
Yes, let's open it up right now. Questions regarding climate change and or the climate action plan the county has in place. Any questions, members of the media, please raise your hand regarding this particular topic now. No questions? Sarah, thank you for joining us. You can remain on the call or you can go if you need to. Mr. County Executive.
Thank you so much.
Like I said, thank you. Yeah, predicting whether climate change is going to influence the frequency and power of tornadoes is going to continue to be studied. But whether it's climate change or whether there's just a shift of Tornado Alley heading east, we're going to have more to deal with one way or the other, apparently going forward. I hope everybody realizes that the tornadoes really can be a threat to our community. We haven't had the experience of regular, frequent, severe tornadoes, but I think we got a little taste of what the damage that this could do this time around, and I hope everybody is just increasingly willing to take seriously tornado warnings. I think when I was younger, you'd hear these little alerts, but nothing would ever materialize. And I think after enough of that, people tend not to think it's real. But I think we're at a point now we have to start thinking about the alerts as this is real, and it's something we have to take seriously. If you are not getting your emergency alerts, you can sign up for text alerts through the Maryland Department of Emergency Management by texting MD Ready to 211-631, or you can create an Alert Montgomery profile in just a few steps online. Either way, you can get alerts and they will help you be up to date on what's happening here. I want to thank the council for moving quickly on holding the interview on Tuesday for my Montgomery County Police Department Chief nominee, Marc Elrich. I anticipate his confirmation next week and look forward to the process being repeated in a few weeks when my Fire Chief nominee, Corey Smedley, goes before the council on June 25th. Two really great people, I think, ready to step up and lead in Montgomery County, and thank the council for its consideration. I want to close with a couple comments about MCPS's budget decisions. First, while I'm not happy with the decision to increase class size, I also recognize their budget is not adequately funded to do what they need to do. This was set in motion last year when the council chose the lower tax rate increase that was actually so low that it didn't actually fully fund the school budget. So $33 million was left out there with the direction from the council to fund it using federal funds, knowing that the federal funds are going to be gone this year. And so that budget comes back with those staff positions and everything, and there's no underlying source of funding to help pay for that $33 million. And you'd have to take that $33 million, add inflation and other costs and blueprint obligations, and it's kind of easy to see, how this budget grew. We were pretty close to dealing with what the public schools sent over the first time, but in the process of going forward, the school system said that they had a $22 million shortfall in the current year's healthcare benefits fund, and that they anticipated the same amount going forward. And that was not part of our initial budget planning. Our suggestion was to do what's allowed in the school system, which is to use the OPEB funds, the Employee Benefit Trust funds, and rather than contributing to the trust fund the full amount, that we would actually contribute a lesser amount and pay the current healthcare costs. And that's something that's actually allowed by the fund rules. The council chose not to do that, and it's created, a greater funding problem for the school system. But the problem is actually bigger than even what we thought, I'd say a month ago or 2 weeks ago. The school system has told us they're anticipating that the current year, the deficit could be as much as $50 million, not $22 million. And this is due to rising healthcare costs. And I know there's a lot of anger and frustration with some aspects of MCPS. I've been frustrated by any number of things, and I do think, myself and the council, as well as pretty much every local government in the state, has called for more accountability and transparency on the part of school systems. But this healthcare problem has nothing to do with either of those things. They hire an actuary, their actuary gives them estimates of what the healthcare costs are going to be, they budget accordingly, and their actuaries have been seriously wrong. And that has led to a large unfunded balance, and those funds, those healthcare costs are going to be paid. And I just had a conversation with some folks in the school system about the need this year to have a real serious discussion about how they're going to deal with this and how we collectively are going to deal with this going forward. I've got to say that we cannot put ourselves in a position where rising healthcare costs result in the county reducing funding for schools or increasing class size because we're not willing to deal with the costs. It's not realistic and it's not right. I'll point out that, this year when other jurisdictions had problems similar to ours, all the Northern Virginia tax jurisdictions are raising taxes. The District of Columbia is raising substantial amount of money through fee increases. Anne Arundel County is raising income and property taxes, and Frederick County to our north had a 5-cent property tax increase. So other people are looking at their needs and focusing on raising the revenues to meet those needs. It's not always pleasant, but that's what taxes are for. And I think we are at a point where we cannot afford to let the schools increase class size. We're going to be looking to try to find a solution to try to plug this gap. For this year, we have some ideas. We've talked with them, with some of the folks in the school system to see if they're amenable, but we think it's critically important that we not go down the path of increasing class size. And we certainly can't make this an annual event where every time the costs of the healthcare go up that we say, well, we're going to increase class sizes again. So I point out that, in the last legislative session, I worked on a couple of bills that were in front of the legislature that could have led to more progressive taxation in Montgomery County. In other words, a tax system that would have been, tax neutral or tax positive for many, if not most residents. In fact, it would be most residents in the county. There was a bill that would have allowed counties to create higher tiers of taxation. Those tiers had to start at $500,000. So incomes below $500,000 would either stay the same or actually get property tax reductions, which is what we were looking to do. Jurisdictions above, people above 5,000, this is not property tax, I'm sorry, it's income tax. People with incomes above $500,000 would have seen some tax increases. It would have been net, we could have created a situation that was net positive for the county. It was not supported by the council and ultimately not supported by the state legislature. But the folks who brought it up are going to be bringing it back again next year. And I do think the county ought to move to progressive taxation and not simply rely on taxing everybody the same way. Montgomery County, different than Virginia, taxes commercial property at the same rate as residential property, which makes it very hard to levy a tax on commercial property because it winds up going on residents as well. That's why there was also a bill in the state legislature that would have allowed for differential between residential and commercial property taxes and would have let us create special taxing districts, which in total probably would not have been net negative for the development community, but would have resulted in payments that would have allowed the county to do more bonding to build infrastructure and use less tax dollars in order to build the infrastructure and have real serious infrastructure needs that we're not meeting right now. The other issue is that the council has left the bond tax amount, the bond bill amount at $280 million for 6 years, and I think everybody who knows anything about inflation, which I think all of us do, particularly after the last few years, knows that $280 million doesn't buy in 2024 and 25 what it bought in 2018. And so we're actually having less real money available to build things, which has led to more delays in school construction and more delays in other projects, including some transportation projects. So I think we've got to come to terms with more realistic funding in this county if we're going to expect to keep pace with the people that we keep saying move ahead of us. I'll point out that Fairfax County has the second highest commercial tax rates in the region. The only place in the region with higher commercial tax rates is the District of Columbia, where commercial taxes can reach about $1.85. In Fairfax, they reach over $1.50. Montgomery County, it's $1.04. Some other jurisdictions, by taxing more on commercial property, are able to provide some relief to residents, but also get more things done than we're able to do. And that's another discussion we'll continue to have. And we'll be doing more to inform the residents about what the choices would look like and what the impacts would be from various scenarios that we have going forward. You weren't able to do this last year, but I'm hoping that we, with a full, robust discussion with the public this year, that we're able to do this. And I look forward to these discussions around the county as we go through the year. But, everybody's got to deal with rising costs. And the school system is kind of a poster child for what's happened in the wrong direction in Montgomery County. We spend today in real dollars almost 20% less than we spend in 2012. And so for all of you who wonder why the schools can't do what they used to do, we've reduced the funding for the schools compared to what they were funded a little over a decade ago. So this is on a per pupil basis. So I think we've got to think hard about, what it is we're trying to do and what are the needs in this community and how do we address those needs. And many of the choices we make will also affect how attractive the county continues to be to outside investment. Our schools, have long been the gem of the county. Schools required and got to that kind of status by willingness to spend money to address class size and make sure we had the staffing and the programs we needed to be successful. If the county is going to decide it's not going to do that, it's going to have implications for our ability to hold up the school system as a model and a major attractive model for people wanting to come to Montgomery County. So these are things we have to think about and choices we're going to have to make going forward. But I'm really concerned about the rise in healthcare costs in the school because it's not a small number. And if that's the new normal, we're going to have to, I think, adjust our thinking about how much we fund the schools and how we fund the schools, because the consequences of not addressing those costs is going to have real impacts on education in the county. I'll leave that here for now. I'm sure we're going to hear a lot more about this as we go on. So before taking questions from the media, I want to invite my health team for any updates they would like to give. So health team, it's all yours.
Thank you, Mr. County Executive. No updates from me today.
No updates from me, Mr. County Executive.
Just a minor awareness that we're continuing to do surveillance of respiratory disease, and we've seen a small uptick of COVID cases over the past 2 weeks. Our in-hospital numbers have gone up by about 16 patients over the last week. So we're just sharing that with the community, that this could be the summer wave that we've seen in past years. And fortunately, each year it has been a smaller wave than the previous year. So we are hopeful that that again happens.
Thank you, Mr. O'Donnell. Members of the media, this is the time we open it up for questions and answers. Please raise your hand and we'll call on you. Any questions at this time? No questions today?
Hello, this is Tom Sherwood.
Hey, Tom. How are you? Good morning. Go ahead.
We can't let him go without any questions.
Go ahead.
Mr. County Executive, where were you when the tornado warnings went off? Were you at travel? If you were traveling, where were you? How did you find out? Did your government let you know soon enough?
Yeah, I get a notice. I was out in San Diego at the bio conference.
I mean, you get a phone call, you get a text from
Text.
the county administrator?
A text and then an update about where the path was and what damage was done.
And my other question is, you talked about how, I'm not sure I heard the right number, that you're spending less on schools now, something 20% less in inflationary dollars compared to 2012 or something?
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yep. I mean, the county hit this, the recession had a severe effect on budgets, and we actually reset the school budget and the maintenance of effort. But, the world resumed and the needs are still there, and the number of teachers we needed increased, and salaries and benefits, particularly salaries, have increased, which they should do over time. And our funding has not kept pace with the student funding that we were putting into the schools before.
All right, thank you.
It makes a difference.
Well, all right. So how can you characterize for the average resident of the district of the county, has the tax burden on the county resident risen or fallen considering inflation?
Well, for years, until we actually fixed our tax system, we had a system that absolutely paralyzed the county. We were in a weird place the way they structured this tax referendum before, that the county actually wasn't able to benefit from rising assessments or new construction fully. And so ironically, as income potential rose, we actually had to reduce our taxes. So we wound up not taking advantage of the natural growth. And we were alone among jurisdictions in the region that had a tax system like that. When I came in, I think the second year we were able to get a referendum and we were able to change the tax structure. But there was no effort to make up for lost ground. We simply were now allowed to receive the gains of increases of construction or increased assessments, which was helpful, but didn't dig us out of the hole. And I'd say that the taxes are pretty moderate. And if the District of Columbia does a comparative assessment of Montgomery County, actually they do it for themselves. They compare DC to Montgomery County and all the Virginia jurisdictions and Prince George's County. And DC has the lowest taxes on residents. Montgomery County was second. DC's is the lowest because the residential property tax is 85 cents.
Yes.
But the commercial property tax is $1.85. Ours is $1.04. And in Virginia, their taxes on residents this year are going to go, I think, back over $1.11 or $1.12. But their taxes on commercial property, like in Tyson's Corner, is over $1.50. Their general tax on commercial property is the base rate for everybody, plus another 12.5 cents, plus 0.7 cents on the sales tax.
We may have lost everybody on all those numbers, but if I'm a resident of the Montgomery County, is my tax burden higher adjusted for inflation, or about the same or lower in the last decade?
I would have to go back and look at, the data on home prices to see where that's taken it. I can get you an answer though.
All right, make Scott work. Okay, thank you very much.
I'll make Scott work.
Okay,
Scott's
thank you very
on here.
much.
I think he's got your instructions.
Okay, good. Thank you for the answering.
Thank you, Tom. Members of the media, any more questions? Raise your hands. Nicole Asbury, Nicole, the Washington Post. Go ahead. Good morning, Nicole.
Good morning. Yeah, I just wanted to ask in particular about county executive. I was listening to a lot of what you were saying about how with inflation, sort of how it's made it more expensive to run a school in general. Like we know that and what have you. But I am sort of trying to understand here, and if you could spell this out for me a little more about, I hear all of what you're saying, but can you explain to me sort of when you made your recommendation, what went into the decision that would have sort of cinched the school's request by 60 million? I wasn't sure if I understood.
So their budget, their initial budget request was 129 million, was $129 million increase. And we were most of the 129 million. We were, I think 107, 109, somewhere around there. But we recommended a cut, which would have saved them 11 million. And the cut we recommended was that the blueprint says that the staff development teachers are supposed to, which right now are 100% staff development teachers, are supposed to go 60% of their time teaching in the classroom and 40% of their time as staff development teachers. So we recommended that this is the year to do it, since we're not having enough money, that they go ahead and implement that all the staff development teachers would be 60% in their classroom. Effectively, that would have reduced the number of people they had to hire by about 100 people and would have saved about 10 or 11 million dollars. So we got pretty close to where they were, and we thought they could figure out how to save a little bit of money. When that number got modified after we had put our budget together with this notice that they had a $22 million shortfall in their healthcare program for teachers and retirees in the current year, and they were expecting at that point 22 million in going forward. And we recommended that instead of appropriating more money, raising taxes, or making cuts, that we be allowed to direct necessary funds out of the payment to the OPEB trust and use that to pay current costs, health insurance costs that they needed to meet. And that would have been a fix for this year and for the coming year, at least at the time. Now the coming year's number is 50 million, no longer 22 million. And this would have, but it would have dealt with the problem without having to go into taxes, without having to make cuts to services, without having to cut county services in order to put money into the school system. And the school system, I think, is fully aware that they have to come to some meeting of the minds along with the unions about how they're going to deal with the rising healthcare costs. We're a self-funded county on healthcare. So the employees and the county contribution together pay for our anticipated healthcare costs. And we rely on good actuarial work so that we're not funding at one level and winding up needing a very different level. The school system had a very large variance from what the actuaries told them to how much money they raised accordingly. And that's kind of created this problem. Our discussion with the schools is now that they have to sit down and figure out how they're going to adjust funding their health insurance plan, because frankly, and it has consequences for the county, because any school money is essentially county money. If the school system share of the health program has to go up, which it would have to go up, then the county's going to have to funnel the money over to pay for the school system share, because their money is our money at the end of the day. And that also means, though, that employee share is going to have to go up, not the percentage necessarily, but the percentage of the total amount. Right today, their payment is based on a percentage of a total amount that's lower than what it actually is, which means they're not fully contributing to the cost of the healthcare where they're supposed
You're
to.
about to slam the DC councils.
Pardon me?
Sorry, excuse me, that was me talking about something else. Forgot to mute myself.
Okay, so that's what we're dealing with. There's no way around it as a cost, and so people have made a lot of noise about, mismanagement. I think there's been some lack of accountability. There's been all the issues that we've raised, I raised down in the state legislature, but at the end of the day, healthcare is a real and fixed cost. It is what it's going to be. And if this is the way healthcare costs are trending, we have to deal with it like a truly legitimate cost like it is. Does that help?
It does. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicole. Members of the media, any more questions? No more questions today? Going once? Going twice? I guess we're done. Have a great morning and afternoon, everyone. We'll see you next time. Thank you, Mr. County Executive.
Thank you.